Did you know that Christians in South Africa involve themselves in solidarity with the people of Palestine? In today's program, we bring you a Christian perspective on the struggle for freedom in Palestine, BDS and Zionism. Our guest on the show is Dr. Stiaan Merwe from KAIROS Southern Africa. Good morning, Doctor, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, and may I use this opportunity to say blessings to the Muslim community for this very, very special time.
Let's begin by talking about KAIROS. What does KAIROS Southern Africa stand for?
The name KAIROS means it is a very special time. It means time, but it's a very special time where people of faith, and in this case Christians, want to pronounce a word of truth from God and God's presence in a very special time of particularly injustice. And it comes in our history, it comes from the 1980s when in the midst of the crisis of and the atrocities of apartheid, that Christians developed what we call the KAIROS document, and announcing the Christian faith as against apartheid, and particularly in that point in time.
So what is the involvement of KAIROS Southern Africa in this particular issue of Palestine here in South Africa?
It is also, let me just say, for us, it is a matter of conscience to be aware of injustice and to stand against injustice for justice as a matter of Christian conscience wherever it occurs. In this particular case, there are two reasons. One is that the occupation and oppression that Palestinians experience are widely supported, either vocally, explicitly, or in silence by so many Christians, even that they don't actually know that in the world. And I think that is our responsibility to bring this to the attention as forceful as we can. Also that we in South Africa, given our history, that Christians in Palestine issued in 2010 a KAIROS document, which was inspired by the KAIROS document in South Africa. They did their own job, and marvelously and courageously so. And in that way that we also connected with them and the Christian voice in Palestine, for Palestine. So it is not just about Christians in Palestine, but also there is that natural link, and particularly also, in our view, that the situation that they face is a situation of the crime of apartheid in terms of international law, and not just by comparison to South Africa. So there are clear links for us and reasons for us to be very, very clearly involved in that situation.
Yes, Doctor, why would Christians in particular here in South Africa involve themselves in solidarity with the Palestinian issue?
Well, as I said, there is very clear link for us. There is also a lot of ignorance in South Africa in general, and in the Christian community in particular as well, about what is actually happening and in whose name it is being done. It is also that occupation, since it is being so widely supported and justified, the policies and actions of the Israeli government by Christians, it is our responsibility to speak out and make people aware of that.
There's often been some kind of confusion among Christians. There are those who can't really differentiate between Zionism and Judaism, and some people tend to actually hate all Jews, yet in fact it's just a small number of Jews who are propagating Zionism.
Yeah, it is for us not against people primarily. It is against a thought form, ideology, which is actually quite a secular ideology, and the interesting thing is how it so clearly linked with what we had in South Africa. Afrikaner Christian nationalism was actually quite a secular ideology in the name of Christianity, and Zionism amongst Israelis has got its own way of saying it, and then we also find Christian Zionism, which is therefore a support of Zionism in their own way, and we have to, as we call it, prophetically and clearly unmask that and speak against that, as we did previously in our own history.
So someone might be wondering, viewing the program and saying, why would Christians be involved in the BDS movement regarding Palestine? What would you tell them?
Well, for us, involvement in that is an act of love. And it also involves, love in the Christian ethos, the Christian faith and Christian awareness is also love towards the humanity of whatever we call enemy. I don't like the word enemy, but let's live for the moment with that. And the BDS is a way to say this is a non-violent resistance against injustice. And this is a way to say change your ways, but we are not going to stand for that. We will stand against that as long as it takes us to do that.
Doctor, what are some of the challenges that you face in trying to help Christians in South Africa to stand in solidarity with Palestinians against Zionism or even Christian Zionism? What are some of these challenges that you face as a Christian person?
Well, the first thing is, I think you sort of alluded to that, and that is namely that it is very difficult, and for some it sounds almost impossible, but let's say for the moment it's very difficult for people to, in their mind, to make a clear distinction between Israel of what we say in the Bible as a religious and as a spiritual community, which has to be there as a blessing for the world, and the secular or the modern state of Israel as a political construct and economic and other things as well. And to make that kind of distinction is very, very difficult for people. And I, as you know, particularly understand that because in my own history, you know, it was difficult for me not to see apartheid as unchristian because it was, you know, Christian, and because it is branded and promoted as Christian, and as a Christian you sort of link up to that until that thing cracks in you. And it is therefore one of our greatest challenges is to help people to see that distinction between Israel as a government, like any other government, and Israel and Judaism, for that matter, as a spiritual message to the world. And that is not being maintained, and I would even say it is deliberately confused as well, and that makes it very difficult. And that is what some people in Palestine would say. Christians say, listen, we can take this occupation and many other things, but what we cannot take is the support given by Christians for the suffering that we experience. And that, even in South Africa, the ignorance and that kind of mindset is a huge challenge.
Doctor, given that love is such an important message of Jesus Christ's teaching, is BDS not militating against that?
Well, okay, I hope I sort of made a kind of comment on that, and thanks for that question. I will take it a little bit further, you know, that love is not just for those whom you like. Love is also for those who you find it a little bit difficult to live with, and even much more than that. And when it comes to injustice, it is standing against injustice. And injustice and those who promote and support and perpetuate justice are harming their humanity as much as they deal with the life and land and people that are being oppressed in injustice. So the yearning of love is to say we will stand against that. That is as an act of love for those who are oppressed, and stand by the oppressed, as Jesus did, and say against those who oppress, in order to help them in some way or the other, if no other means are helping, which doesn't seem to be working in this case. So here is at least a non-violent way of standing against that. And Christians often find it difficult, I understand that, yet that is our obligation. That is what we did in our own history, when we also as Christians called for boycott us, in order that this situation can change as well.
Finally, Doctor, tell us about what are some of the companies that the BDS campaign is trying to boycott? What are some of the South African companies that you're boycotting against?
Well, let me say, KAIROS Southern Africa is partnering in some way with the BDS South Africa. And I mean, there is a whole list. I mean, I can take you through a whole list for half an hour of companies and so on. Here at this point in time is this company in I think it's Northern Cape, who is exporting dates to Israel, and a company or an organization is brokered in the settlement, and it is being promoted as under Israel. And we find that in terms of international trade law, unacceptable, and also morally to say, listen, we need to be aware that companies who deal with Israel and thereby support and benefit from the occupation, we need to bring that to the attention. And I would even say, including governments, political parties that support Israel need to be shamed as well. And if that includes South African parties, we recently had the African Christian Democratic Party declaring some form of support, a very clear support for Israel, seemingly oblivious of what is happening in Palestine, and seemingly forgetting what happened in South Africa. And we have to speak against that. And if it means also the ANC, whom we are a bit concerned about, is not clear on what is happening in Palestine, the same applies. So it is not just businesses, it's also political movement and other organizations, including churches, with investments and so on in companies that benefit from the occupation, or from Israel and the settlements. And that is a challenge for us as well, to look also, whilst we are dealing with Christianity and the church in South Africa, to say what is happening, where are our investments are going, what companies are we supporting, and thereby the church and the Christian community will have to say, listen, what are these companies, and what is our voice also vis-a-vis political parties and other groupings who in their own way, either through ignorance or deliberately, support the occupation of Palestine, which is, as I say, is an apartheid occupation. There is no doubt for me, in my mind, in our mind, in terms of international law on that.
Well, as we wind off our interview, Doctor, would you maybe want to give out your details, maybe in case somebody out there wants to support KAIROS?
My telephone number is 082 5746201, and unfortunately I don't have they can go on Facebook. KAIROS Southern Africa is on Facebook, and they can join in there and get more detail also of publications, documents, and things that we are busy doing.
Thank you very much for coming to studio this morning.
Thank you.
Well, that was our guest, Dr. Stiaan van Merwe from KAIROS Southern Africa, joining us to talk about a number of issues regarding BDS and, of course, the Christian support and solidarity for the people suffering in Palestine.